Welcome to Cadalyst Magazine's CAD Manager Chronicles with CAD management expert Robert Green. This episode is sponsored by DraftSite from SolidWorks.
Hello and welcome to CAD Manager Chronicles. This is our periodic video log of issues that we think are pertinent for CAD managers. Thank you for attending. This is episode 4, where we'll be talking about making upgrade decisions. Now, if you stay in software long enough, I don't care whether you're doing CAD or mechanical modeling or BIM, you're going to have to upgrade your software. But it's not just as simple as saying, yes, we're upgrading this year, or no, we're not. There's a process you need to go through, and there's actually an intelligent way to make this decision about when you should upgrade. And that's what we'll be talking about in the session today. So let's go ahead and have a look. The first thing is upgrades are not automatic. You have to think about them. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you have to do testing and validation on the upgrade software to know whether it makes sense for you to do this or not. You have to look at important things to your users, like user interface changes, new features that might be useful or might hamper them. Are there going to be any disruptions to existing workflows? These could be standards and procedures that you've cultivated over a length of time. Would the upgrade be disruptive to those processes? Training requirements. What will it take to teach people to use it? What's the return on investment of pursuing an upgrade? This is a reasonable question, and these are things that we need to talk about. And yes, there will be some things that could be beyond your control that could necessitate an upgrade, and we'll talk about those too. So let's go ahead and jump in and we'll discuss all these factors. Testing. Question everything, and always keep certain things in mind that could affect you whenever pursuing an upgrade, such as you have to use your own real-world data. You have to evaluate the upgrade in the context of how you work, not an example that's provided to you by somebody else that's not applicable. So you have to use real-world data. You have to replicate the current workflows that you already have to make sure that the upgraded software is going to work within the parameters of those workflows. You have to note any good or problematic UI changes. There could be things that are great in the upgrade. There could be things that are different that will necessitate training just because it's different. And so these are things that you have to experience for yourself in real-world data sets, real-world workflows. As you're doing this, of course, you need to look for useful new features. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of an upgrade, is to get at some useful new features that could make life better, faster, more productive for you. That would be the entire reason to do the upgrade. So we always want to keep an eye open for those things as we're going through the testing as well. Now, we want to use several test subjects at varying experiential levels, not just the CAD manager, not just me, not just you, but a broad spectrum of people throughout the company, because we have to know how it's going to impact everyone, from the CAD manager all the way down to the production. We need to know how this is going to work for everyone. And then the real question is going to be, if you put this upgrade in place, how much time on a weekly, annualized basis, how much time are you going to save or lose as a result of doing the upgrade? Because that's the number that you need to know whether it makes sense. Now, as you go through this testing and find your data, you need to write a brief summary worksheet. Now, I'm not talking about anything that needs to be published. My point is, capture the information as you're acquiring it so that you don't forget, because later you might be asked what your numbers are, and you'll want to make sure that you have an accurate written log of what your testing has exposed. Now, can we draw a few conclusions already? Yes. First thing is, never trust what a software company tells you about an upgrade. Validate it for yourself. You need to know how this upgrade is going to perform in your own usage environment. Moving on. Now, gathering the data. These pieces of numeric data are going to be extremely important, so I want to mention them. you need to know what the software acquisition is going to cost. Now, many times, if you're on subscription, you already have the software. So the acquisition cost may be zero. You may already have it. But if you do have to pay something for an upgrade, factor that in. What is it going to cost you to install it? Now, this is your time to figure out how to install it, IT's time to deploy it over all your users' machines. What is the training that you're going to need to do? What will the preparation for that cost? And this is largely your time because you have to produce study guides or you have to go outside to acquire these materials. So this will have a cost, whether it's your cost or someone else's. The point is it costs. And then finally, what will the user time spent in training be? If you have to have 50 users in a 1-hour training session, then that's 50 man hours of time, and that has a cost associated with it. So these are all the costs that you need to know. You counterbalance these costs with the labor savings that you can gain from the upgrade. Now that is from the cool new features and the faster performance and everything that the upgrade should offer you. You need to know how much time you can save because that ultimately is going to be what pays for the upgrade. We'll see more on that in just a moment. Now, your testing should provide pretty good estimates for these numbers. It won't be perfect, but should be pretty good. And you should be able to put together a pretty good cost picture already. Let's draw a conclusion. Okay, nothing else is going to matter if CAD production doesn't run. So whatever you're doing with this upgrade, you have to realize that it must facilitate production. It has to speed production up to save money. If it slows anything down, it's costing you money. So this goes back to kind of the golden rule of CAD management. It's our job to make sure that CAD runs well and that production hums along smoothly. Next up, we want to look at the return on investment, or ROI, that is produced as a result of the upgrade. Now, simply put, ROI, you divide the savings. Remember I said, what is the labor savings you can generate from this upgrade? This is increased productivity. This is things running faster. This is able to get more projects done in less time. These are the savings that you quantified. Now you divide that by the cost plus the install plus the training that you computed when you ran through the numerics. You multiply this by 100%, and now what you have is an ROI percentage number. I recommend that you consider all values for a 1-year period. Now, someone may ask, why not longer? Why not 2 years or 3 years? Because upgrades are typically annual. So this is a 1-year life cycle in the software, so we should evaluate it as such. So for 1 year, and we'll look at this in more detail in a moment. Now, please notice that if the savings exactly equals the cost of the software plus the installation cost plus the training cost, then your ROI will be precisely 100%. And this is interesting to note because ROIs at 100 or greater are really good. Anything less than 100 is something that you have to interpret, which is where we're going next. So let's interpret the ROI numbers that you computed. If you got an ROI below 50%, I would say don't bother with the upgrade. Why is this? Because the savings you're generated is going to take 2 years to pay for the upgrade. And chances are by that point, the next upgrade will have been out already, and you should probably be evaluating that next year rather than this one. So an ROI below 50% is not good. If we look at an ROI between 50 to 75%, upgrading may be justified. I mean, if it solves a specific problem for us, or if it deals with some sort of really neat feature like importing a data format we've not been able to before, then it may be worth it. And it may not be worth it for all users, but on balance, it may be worth it for the company if the ROI can come in somewhere between 50 to 75%. Now, from 75% up to 100%, upgrading probably is justified. You're getting into the range where the software can pay for itself, the upgrade can pay for itself in a year or perhaps a little more, maybe 15 months or 14 months, somewhere in that time range, that's pretty good performance for an upgrade. And it must be saving you money, or you wouldn't be able to achieve an ROI that's bumping up against 100%. Now, as we move on the graphic on the right, as we're dialing up from minimum to maximum, anything that is over a 100% ROI, definitely upgrade. Definitely, because the upgrade is paying for itself. It is producing enough savings for you to pay for itself in the first year you install it. So you should go ahead and reap the benefits of that upgrade simply because it's generating enough savings, time, and labor to make it all worthwhile for you. It's paying for itself, literally. So this is when we definitely want to upgrade. Now, I would say that you can have an impression this upgrade is probably worth it. It may not be worth it. That is never going to be as good to your boss as saying, we have done the metrics on this, we've actually looked at it, here's the ROI, and here's the recommendation for whether we upgrade or not. In my mind, going to an ROI analysis is really the only way to make a cogent argument for upgrading or not upgrading, as the case may be. It's not an impression, it's not your opinion, it's numeric, it's arithmetic, and it's based in business logic, which is what you want. Let's move on. Right away, you can see from the very equation of ROI that savings drives the discussion. If you can't save money by installing an upgrade, there's not going to be a return on investment for you, and it's simply not worth doing. If ROI is at 100% or higher, that means the upgrade will actually pay for itself in 1 year or less if the number is greater than 100. And since we're talking about an annual upgrade cycle, that is clearly a compelling upgrade. So again, this is just the way to quantify it and to understand from a business point of view what makes sense. All right, let's move on with some exceptions to the rule. There's rules, and there's always exceptions to them. So let's see what those might be. So exceptions to the ROI rule. Sometimes these types of things can actually override the ROI math. For example, the old version of the software is no longer supported. For example, it doesn't work on the latest version of Windows, or the software vendor is no longer providing technical support for it. You've clearly ridden the old version of the software to its logical conclusion, and now you're going to have to upgrade. In fact, in some of these cases, the amount of training and workflow disruption will actually be quite high, and the ROI on this type of upgrade will actually be quite low. But you have no choice because the old software is no longer supported. In a likewise manner, what about data file formats? What if you have to support a new version of BIM software or mechanical modeler, or data formats for interchange files have changed, and you have to upgrade the software to achieve those types of format consistencies? Well, you may have to upgrade no matter what the ROI would dictate. Maybe using the software is exactly the same except for some of these file versions, so it doesn't particularly produce any real new productivity. But the compatibility does. So this is another case where you might have the exception to the rule. If the client you work for tells you you will use this software and this version, then you don't have any choice. It's a contractual requirement. What about if your different branch offices are on different versions of the same software, and this is causing inter-office compatibility problems, saving over files, files not being upward or backward compatible, creating hassles between branch offices? This is another scenario where upgrading can be indicated even if it's disruptive and even if the ROI is quite low. So these are some of the exceptions to the rule that you would really want to look at critically, because it may be necessary for you to move on even though it's not indicated strictly on ROI metrics. Let's draw some conclusions. Now, sometimes software obsolescence or legal constraints can force an upgrade path on you, no matter what all the other math or all the other data you've collected might indicate. And sometimes that's just the way that this works. But I want you to do the math anyway, so that you'll be able to say, here's what we've looked at, here's why we're having to do this, and these are the factors that are compelling us to go forward with this. For example, if you're forced into upgrading simply due to software obsolescence, users may complain this new software is very different. It's confusing for me to learn. I had to go through training. It was disruptive to the workflows that I was used to. I don't understand why we've done this upgrade. Well, then you'll understand what those disruptive factors are, but you'll also be able to back it up with data and say, here's why we're doing this. It's because our clients compel us to do it, or because our software vendor compels us to do it. So taking into account the ROI logic and the exceptions to the rule gives you a complete picture as to why or if you should upgrade or not. There's really no shortcut to it. You have to do this in order to be well informed and know exactly what you need to do. Making a smart upgrade decision is kind of equal parts of software exploration, testing, user validation, it's ROI, it's looking at customization, it's looking at how disruptive things will be to the workflows that your users have become used to over the last 1, 2, or 3 years. And all these things certainly play into making an upgrade decision. But if you don't do the homework, you're only guessing. And that's really the conclusion that I want you to take away from this presentation more than anything. You have to do the homework and evaluate the parameters as I've shown you here so that you can make a smart decision. Now, I will say that whenever I've used this methodology, I've been well received by management and I've rarely been surprised. That is, if users registered objections, I had it in the data. If management's questioned why we're undertaking such a disruptive upgrade process, I can say, well, it's because we're being compelled to by a client or a contractual requirement. So by going through this process, I'm always covered. I always have the data that I need to document why I made the decision I made. I will also say that on the rare occasions when I've been pushed or bullied into an upgrade without going through this process, that's when I've had regrets. That's when I haven't had the answers to those types of questions, and I've experienced friction either with users or with management. So my last recommendation to you in episode 4, making upgrade decisions, is to do your homework and be prepared. And that way, you'll make smart upgrade decisions every single time. Thanks for attending. Hope to see you again at a future episode.
Thanks for joining us today. Until next time, read more from Robert Greene at Cadalyst.com. Thank you to our sponsor, DraftSite from SolidWorks.